Warren Buffett knows what he's talking about.
Don't you mean Warren Buffett?
Absolutely. Let's talk specifics on the EV market itself, because you made a few recent videos that have been awesome, kind of talking about some more niche EV companies. And I think when a lot of people hear EV, they think about Tesla, obviously. They probably think about Nikola on the other side of it. Maybe some of the smaller guys like Helion and Workhorse. But there's a lot of other companies out there that are making steps in the right direction when it comes to EVs. And something that your videos kind of opened my eyes to were, again, you think about electric vehicles, you think about Tesla, you think about your sedans, potentially even a pickup truck, but there's a lot more motorized vehicles that could potentially be turned to electric, right? And that's a whole nother market that nobody's talking about. So maybe just give us your perspective on where you see the electric vehicle market going. And then a lot of hype right now behind it, but do you think this is sustainable, or do you think kind of people are just trying to, like you said, find that next Tesla potentially in the EV world?
Yeah. I think it's a little bit of both. People trying to find that next Tesla, of course, and I think it's, of course, some of it's hype, but I also think we're just starting to see some of the emerging of what's possible for the EV market. Now, do I think certain companies may have been ran up very high at this certain point? Yeah, true. I definitely think you should probably wait for a healthy pullback before entering a position if you don't already own some of it. But I think it's a little bit of hype. I also think, and when I say sustainable, that's a great question, because I think we're going to see growth like this, but I don't think it's going to be the entire EV market. I think it's going to be, a select stocks in the EV market when things kind of emerge, is what I think personally. Now, I could be wrong, but I think that's what we will see.
It makes sense. Let's talk some of the specifics with the companies you've kind of done a deep dive into recently. One of them being iDynamics. It's funny, a lot of these companies, I don't know about you, but it's like hard to pronounce some of their names. I feel like they need to simplify them a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, man, what I do, kind of just being transparency, if I don't know how to pronounce a company or a certain country, I literally go to Google Voice, type it in, and listen to it a few times so I can get it down, so I know how to say it.
That's probably the smart way to do it. Yeah. Especially before you make a video for thousands of people to see.
Yeah, for sure.
So iDynamics, its ticker symbol is IDEX for anyone that's just kind of wants to follow along. For my understanding is they're kind of investing in these other EV companies. Is that kind of the strategy that they're taking?
Yeah. So they have a lot of different mergers and acquisitions, and I focus more on kind of the EV side of it. So they had their hands on a few EV companies, Tree Electric. You have Sotrack, and then you have Motorworks that will be coming. I believe it's Motorworks as well. I have to take a look at that again, but. What I like about them is that they're investing in these companies and they don't actually own the full stake. So it kind of, I guess, lessens their, what's the word I'm looking for?
Their exposure, basically, to like one failing versus the other, or something like that.
Correct. So I think it's a great way to kind of hedge your bet. I like that they're invested in the emerging markets as well. So I think that gives you that great exposure also, because I think some people are only looking at the US market, where there's so much growth in the outside of the US. So if you can, find these companies on the outside, like, for example, NEO, they're basically the next Tesla. They're technically, if you leave it to stock talk, they're kind of like the next proven EV company after Tesla. So when you kind of look at those things like that, I guess you kind of want to find companies to have a nice moat coming into this industry. Like, they have one of the retailers who are the only EV manufacturer in the ASEAN market. That's huge. That's 650 million population. And when they have 51% ownership in the only EV person, that gives them the leg up. That gives them first to that market. That gives them the moat, So even if they need to make changes, they know what to expect from the market, because they've already been in the market compared to a new company that may be coming into the market, So I think there's a lot of smaller things that maybe people may not take consideration of, where become big over time. If we kind of just go back to the internet industry, look how Google started off small in certain niches with the internet. And then just over time, it slowly just expanded and expanded. And people's like, man, I had no idea that this would be this big. For e-commerce, for example, look how huge e-commerce is now. Nobody thought that, you know, an online store would kind of take over the brick and mortar, you know. So, and that's just kind of what we're seeing now, the transformation of tech, you know. So, I mean, I think investing in tech is a great way to, you know, get exposure.
And are you, when you're specifically talking about kind of in the emerging markets, I know Tree Electric, what that they're mainly focused in Malaysia, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they're again, it's kind of coming back to what I was alluding to earlier with, again, you think about sedans, but again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Tree Electric, they're mainly talking about like buses and mopeds, right?
Correct. Yep. Their main focus was mopeds at first, and now they're kind of segueing into, you know, buses and things like that. But yeah, for sure.
And that's a huge market over there. Not to mention, and this is me just putting pieces together that might not even be there, but a lot of these places in the emerging markets get like, ridiculed all around the world for pollution, and
Hmm.
I think as time progresses, even a place like China is trying to do things where they're trying to limit their pollution, and that means they're going to give the upper hand to these electric vehicle manufacturers going forward to try and progress that, and not only kind of show good relations to the other countries around the world, but also trying to improve the environment around them would be my kind of assumption.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think with how populated these places are and how small they are for how populated they are, having smaller vehicles is a win-win for these type of environments because they can park them in odd places. They can have more on the road. So I think it's a win-win that people may not see how other countries may live compared to how the US live, you know?
Right. Yeah, I think I'm this. I mean, I'm this way, but I tend to be very short-sighted, right? It's a huge world out there, and oftentimes when we're kind of in our own country, we just are looking at what's right in front of us, and there's a lot of people around the world that are going to be shifting to the electric vehicle market.
That's true. I will say my next vehicle most likely will be an EV vehicle. What about you?
I would like to say so. I think it's just going to depend on, at the end of the day, like I'm still trying to save money, so we're
Right.
just gonna have to take a look. But if Tesla does what they're saying, where they think they're gonna have a $25,000 Tesla out here in the next few years, I'm right there with you. It's definitely something I want to do. It'll be
Yeah.
it'll be what I would prefer to do. We'll just have to kind of see what happens after that.
Right. Right. Makes sense.
And then Solo was another one you were talking about. You're kind of talking about smaller vehicles. Maybe talk to us a little bit about what those guys are trying to do.
Yeah. So it's a one passenger vehicle, and they're focusing on the commuters who commute every day, but singly, you know. And even if you think about my wife and I, we definitely have both of our own cars, but if we're going somewhere together, of course, we're going to drive together. But when we're driving to work, if you think about it, we're driving alone, you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're really going after those commuters that are single. And I believe it's like 105 million just in the United States alone that is commuting singly every day. And then when you think about the expense of the vehicle, how more inexpensive it is, they already have companies and fleets that are interested in these vehicles. The new concept that they released with the new bigger luggage, which makes it so affordable, makes it a lot more sense for like Uber, Lyft, delivery companies like your
Yeah.
Pizza Hut, your so I think it's a huge market. And if you kind of go back to when Volkswagen put out the Beetle, it was a love-hate relationship with consumers, right? There was people who loved it, and then over time, that community and that niche was so strong for that car, it just kind of grew over time, and it was one of the top selling cars, for a couple of years for Volkswagen. And when you look at Solo, I think Solo is going to take that similar approach because I think the niche is so strong. Of course, there's going to be people who don't like the design of it, but I think there's going to be a lot more people who do. And when I think you start to see it on the road, people will be like, man, that is a cool car. I want one of those. And I just think it's going to catch on. That's just what I think.
Yeah, if you don't know what Mike's talking about, Google the little Solo car right now. It's kind of a funky looking thing, man. It kind of looks like a tadpole. It's got does it have, is it three wheels? It looks like two wheels
It
up
is.
front, one wheel
Yep.
in the back. And it's
Uh-huh.
literally like if you think about you sitting in the driver's seat of your car and you take away everything else around you, it's legitimately just like a solo vehicle with some cargo in the back. So it's definitely interesting. I think you're right. It'll probably have some of those a lot of haters, but a lot of people will like it. And then again, just kind of bridging the gap here. Have you been hearing about cloud kitchens? Have you heard that term kind of thrown around at all?
I have not. I have not. Make me
Yeah.
familiar with it.
So again, this is, I'm by no means an expert, but my understanding is with things like Uber Eats, you know, all these delivery services, DoorDash, all these guys only getting bigger and bigger. The idea is that there will be kitchens popping up in cities where they don't even have dining. Like you can't even go and sit down to eat there, but they will just rent
Okay.
out the kitchen space. They'll produce the food and then you can just order it via your Uber Eats or your DoorDash. So I think that's the term they're throwing around is a cloud kitchen, because it's kind of like, you know, you're buying
Interesting.
something from the cloud. Um,
Right.
so I could definitely see these vehicles, like you mentioned, you know, why are they going to buy, you know, or even have their guys kind of, they could eventually just kind of produce their own version of Uber Eats if they're doing a delivery type service, or Uber or one of these big dogs could start a contract with these guys where you don't have to use your own car to drive for Uber Eats. I'm just kind of spitballing here, but those are just kind of different things as we're kind of bridging the gap between all these
Yeah.
kind of shifts that are happening with the pandemic. I could see that kind of start to take place as well.